Alright, first and foremost, giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai. That's the name of the Most High God, and the name of His only begotten Son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. This is Wardock Bagay Al-Banashar, sending out greetings and salutations, peace and grace upon the elders and the Akim that do this truth, that work and labor in this truth and sincerity. Alright, I wanted to touch on something that I've seen Christians touch on, which is the absolute nonsense and ludicrousy that Isaiah, the 14th chapter, and the first to the third verse has already come to pass. Alright, so I'm gonna just get that right quick and read it. This is Isaiah chapter 14, verse 1. For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land, and the stranger shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob, and the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids, and they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. And it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow, and from thy fear, and from the hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve. Alright, so they'll say that these three scriptures, this prophecy, came to pass. And they'll say it came to pass during the Medo-Persian captivity, which is just oxymoronic and retarded, for the lack of a better term, because it fully says in verse 2 and 3 that we're going to take captives whose captives we were, and that we're going to have rest from fear, from hard bondage, and from sorrow. All right, but we're getting rest and we're getting rest from bondage and sorrow and fear and in a captivity. That doesn't make any kind of sense. But we're gonna go through this through the spirit and power of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai and show how to cut this with the scriptures. Okay, so the main scripture that they'll use is Ezra chapter 2, verse 65. Okay. So this is Ezra chapter 2, verse 65. Beside their servants and their maids, of whom were 7,337, and there were among them 200 singing men and singing women. So they'll use this to say, look, the Israelites were let back into their land, let to build a temple, and they had servants and handmaids with them. So that means that's the fulfillment of Isaiah 14, 1 and 2, 3. First thing, nowhere in the scriptures does it's in Ezra's or Nehemiah, okay, does it say that the servants that they went back into the land with were Babylonians. So for a Christian to say that, what they're doing is adding to the word, inferring, okay, things that they accuse us Israelites of doing. Okay? The easiest way to cut that is you go to the first verse of Ezra, the second chapter. It says, now these are the children of the province that went up out of the captivity. So this whole chapter is listing all the people that left Babylon, right? Of those which have been carried away, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, carried away unto Babylon, and came again unto Jerusalem, Judah, everyone to see. So this list here that this chapter is talking about, including verse 65, where it talks about the handmaids and servants, these people came with us, or came with the southern kingdom to Babylon. They're not the Babylonians that were taking that we took into captivity, or they'll say the Persians gave us them as slaves or as handmaids and servants. No, these are the servants and the handmaids that we had already had, or the southern kingdom had already had, while still dwelling in the land of Israel, still dwelling in Judah. All right. So that's the first cut. So now let's get Nehemiah chapter 5. I'm going to start at verse 1. And remember, Isaiah 14:2 says that we're gonna possess the heathen. Verse 3 says we're gonna have rest from sorrow and from fear and from hard bondage. Okay? And it says, and there was a great cry of the people and of their wives against their brethren the Jews, for there were that said, we, our sons and our daughters are many, therefore Salakia. Therefore we take up corn for them, that we may eat and live. Some also there were that said, we have mortgaged our lands and vineyards and houses, that we might buy corn because of the dearth. So there's a famine on the land. Right? Already, it does not sound like rest at all. There was a famine in the land, and they were having to mortgage their land and their houses and their crops so that they can survive. There were also that said, we have borrowed money for the king's tribute, that upon our lands and vineyards. Right? So they're borrowing money. So if you're at rest, if you're living well, how are you borrowing money? Yet now our flesh is as the flesh of our brethren, our children as their children, and lo, we bring into bondage our sons and our daughters to be servants, and some of our daughters are brought unto bondage already. Neither is it in our power to redeem them, for our other men have our lands and vineyards. So all this, there's bondage, there's financial struggle clearly going on. So how is this rest from sorrow and from fear and from bondage? And I was very angry when I heard their cry and these words. Then I consulted with myself and rebuked the nobles and the rulers, and said unto them, Ye exact usury every one of his brother. And I set a great assembly against them. And I said unto them, We after our ability have redeemed our brethren the Jews, which were sold unto the heathen. And will ye even sell your brethren, or shall they be sold unto us? Then held they their peace, and found nothing to answer. Also I said, It is not good that ye do. Ought ye not walk in the fear of our power, because of the reproach of the heathen, our enemies? I likewise and my brethren and my servants might exact of them money and corn. I pray you, let us leave off this usury. Restore, I pray you, to them even this day their lands, their vineyards, their olive yards, and their houses, also the 100th part of the money and of the corn and of the wine, that ye exact them. So there was financial struggling going on. There was people being put into bondage. So this is clearly not rest, like it talks about in Isaiah the 14th chapter, the 3rd verse. There is no rest in the Medo-Persian captivity, right? Let's jump down to verse 18. Now that which was prepared for me daily was 1 ox and 6 choice sheep. Also fowls were prepared for me, and once in 10 days store of all sorts of wine. Yet for all this required not I the bread of the governor, because the bondage was heavy upon this people. Once again, bondage, heavy bondage, right? Isaiah 14:3 said, And it shall come to pass in that day, the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow and from thy fear and from the hard bondage wherein thou was made to serve. So how is it that the Isaiah 14:3 says we'll have rest from hard bondage, but in the time of Nehemiah there was hard bondage going on, which is the time of the Medo-Persian captivity? So meaning the Medo-Persian captivity could not be the fulfillment of Isaiah the 14th chapter, the 1st to the 3rd verse. It literally cannot be. Okay? Let's get Nehemiah. The 1st chapter and the 3rd verse. And it says, And they said unto me, The remnant that are left of the captivity there in the province are in great affliction and reproach. The wall of Jerusalem is also broke down, and the gates are burned with fire. So once again, affliction and reproach, showing that there's no rest in the Persian captivity, showing that the Persian captivity could not be the fulfillment of Isaiah the 14th chapter, because you still had, yes, we went to our land, but we were still under subjection to the Persians. Okay, which is not rest. All right. Let's go to Ezra, chapter 3, verse 3. And it says, and they set the altar upon his bases, for fear was upon them because of the people of those countries, and they offered burnt offerings there unto the Lord, even burnt offerings morning and evening. So fear was upon the Israelites. So we see bondage and fear going on during the time of the Persian Empire, right? Go back to Isaiah 14. Isaiah chapter 14, verse 3, and it shall come to pass in that day, that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow, and from thy fear, and from the hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve. So we see clearly, like we went through scripture per scripture upon scripture, precept upon precept, through Nehemiah and Ezra, which were the prophets that were on the scene during the Persian Empire, the Persian captivity, that there was not rest from bondage, that there was not rest from fear. Both these things were still going on in our with our people. They were still in fear. They were still in hard bondage. So the Persian Empire, the return to the land to build a temple could not be what Isaiah 14 is talking about, right? And with that, I would like to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. Shalom.